This video is sponsored by Conflict of Nations, a free online player versus player strategy game where you can lead your nation in a modern-day global conflict. Set in the present day, research and make use of over 100 cutting-edge weapons and vehicles to fight with up to 64 real players at a time in exciting real-time combat. Declare war on your neighbours or forge alliances as strong as the coalition of Desert Storm. Conquer provinces, take capitals, and fight for world domination in hard-fought campaigns that can last weeks. Conflict of Nations is cross-platform, so you can compete with your friends on both PC and mobile on the same account to find out who is the ultimate general. The Operations Room fans who sign up by clicking the unique link below will receive 13,000 gold and a month of premium subscription completely free. Don't miss out, as the offer is only available for 30 days. So click the link in the description below, choose your country, and start fighting your way to victory. It's 11 PM on the 28th of March 2003. The men of A Squadron from the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, or Scots DG, are receiving a briefing on their next mission, a daring raid into the heart of Basra, Iraq's besieged second largest city. Major Tim Brown outlines the plan for the raid, and ends by telling his men, "I cannot think of a better group of men to execute this raid. Your courage and professionalism has been obvious to all over the last few days. So, unless any of you have any questions, I suggest we all get our heads down and get as much sleep as possible." The men disperse back to their tanks to rest when they hear a nearby explosion. Thanks to the non-stop work of British AS-90 artillery guns, most of the Scots DG believe they are merely picking an inopportune time to shell the enemy defences around Basra. However, a second explosion lands directly in the middle of A Squadron's camp, which sends Scots DG scrambling for cover. This is followed in quick succession by 38 more explosions. An Iraqi BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher has found the range and is hitting the British position. A fuel tanker takes a direct hit and explodes, while soft-skin Bedford trucks are torn apart by shrapnel. Major Brown and his loader make a break for their Challenger 2. The two men clamber into the tank and shut the hatch tight while the barrage continues. After a minute, the explosions die down and the British tank crewmen gingerly exit their cover. Despite the heavy bombardment, only 3 men have been wounded and none seriously. Sensing that his men are eager to get back at the enemy, Major Brown puts his headset on and informs A Squadron, "Charlie Charlie, this is Zero Alpha, raiding party, prepare to move out at 0200 Zulu time." A loud cheer goes up as the Scots DG again prepare to move out. Since the city was cut off on the 24th of March, slowly but surely the British 1st Armoured Division has been tightening the perimeter around Basra. Although the coalition's overwhelming firepower will almost certainly result in victory, the British are facing more enemy resistance than originally anticipated. Although Basra is surrounded and Iraqi forces are taking heavy casualties, Saddam Hussein's local commander, Ali Hassan al-Majid, has managed to hold the city through fear and intimidation. Nicknamed Chemical Ali by the press, al-Majid rules Basra with the fanatical Fedayeen militia, who often commit atrocities against innocent civilians. On the 27th of March, Fedayeen fighters indiscriminately fired into a crowd of civilians fleeing through a humanitarian corridor, killing or wounding several, including women and children. In response, the 1st Armoured Division has planned a show of force to dissuade the Fedayeen from attacking the humanitarian corridor. A Squadron, with a platoon from Bravo Company 1st Black Watch, will strike into Basra through the main dual carriageway known as Route Red. A Squadron's Challenger 2s will stop just short of the narrow, maze-like streets of Old Town and destroy 3 targets: the city's main TV and radio mast, the Fedayeen's headquarters, and a massive statue of Saddam Hussein. Once these objectives are eliminated, the column will turn around and withdraw the same way they came in. A BBC reporter will be embedded with A Squadron to show the British public that Saddam's attacks on civilians will not be tolerated. While the Thunder runs into Baghdad later in the campaign will receive much coverage, the first Thunder runs of Operation Iraqi Freedom will be conducted by the Scots DG in Basra. The raiding party sets off towards the line of departure just before dawn on the 29th of March. The assault will be made by 11 Challenger 2s of A Squadron, with 4 Warrior infantry fighting vehicles carrying a platoon from Bravo Company of the Black Watch following closely behind. A tank recovery vehicle and 2 ambulances will bring up the rear of the formation. The tanks will advance in a staggered formation with 6 Challenger 2s covering the left side of the road, while 5 will deal with resistance on the right. With this raiding force ready, Major Brown counts down the time to H-hour. At 5 AM, Brown breaks radio silence and transmits to the rest of his unit. Charlie Charlie 1, this is 0 Alpha. 3, 2, 1, move now. With this, the armoured column surges forward and crosses the bridge in front of them. The raid has begun. After crossing the bridge, the lead tanks accelerate to 40 miles per hour down the highway through the wasteland which separates the bridge from Basra's city limits. Hearing the roar of tank engines, Iraqi army and Fedayeen militia defending the main route into the city quickly ready their defences. As the British column approaches the outskirts of the city, they are hit with a wave of machine gun and RPG fire from both sides of the road. The warriors and support vehicles stop short of the Iraqi kill zone, while the challengers continue forward, returning fire with their coaxial machine guns. Most of the Iraqi RPGs miss, but the British tankers are amazed by the solid wall of fire greeting them. The tanks pass through the heart of the kill zone, with Major Brown carefully controlling the pace of the advance, mindful of not moving too fast or too slow. Despite orders not to take part in combat, the recovery vehicle is also returning fire. The Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, or REME, have smuggled 2 extra men and an extra general-purpose machine gun into their vehicle. 2 REMEs fire back using their GPMGs, while another leans out of his hatch and picks off hostiles with a pump-action shotgun. Members of the Scots DG recalled joking that their engineers must have a screw loose, but now they have their proof. The armoured column continues along the main road into Basra, as British and Iraqi tracers zip through the heavy morning mist. After an intense 5 minutes in combat, the Iraqi fire slackens, as the Scots DG make it through the kill zone without any casualties. Now, the column splits up, as the Challenger 2s seek out their targets. Captain Steve Walters takes the 3 tanks of 2nd Troop forward into the heart of the city to destroy the statue of Saddam Hussein. Lieutenant Ed O'Brien's 4th Troop and Staff Sergeant Tiffy Hanson's 3rd Troop stick together to engage the TV antenna and Fedayeen headquarters, which are across the street from each other. Captain Walters' 2nd Troop accelerates ahead of the main column and disappears into the city towards the statue, just as the other tanks reach their objectives. The 8 remaining tanks drive towards their targets, while Iraqi fire picks up again. Once they arrive at their respective objectives, the challengers drive forwards and backwards to present the nearby Iraqis with a moving target. Sergeant Will Montgomery's Challenger is engaged by a heavy machine gun atop a 40-foot watchtower next to the TV antenna. Montgomery sends a single HESH round into the watchtower, which shatters and collapses to the ground. All 5 Challenger 2s on the right-hand side of the road open up on the TV antenna, pounding the base with their main guns, while the 3 challengers on the left suppress the Fedayeen's headquarters with HESH rounds and machine gun fire. Enemy fire from the building begins to slacken as the defenders are killed or forced to flee by the tanks. The HESH rounds punch massive holes in the building, so large that Challenger 2s could fit through the openings. The 3-story headquarters is obliterated within minutes, as most of the enemy fighters flee the position. Meanwhile, Captain Walters and 2nd Troop have reached the statue of Saddam Hussein, having blasted their way through a hail of RPG fire. Once they arrive at the statue, 2nd Troop wastes no time in getting to work. Corporal David Ross is tasked with destroying the statue, while the rest of the Challenger 2s quickly set up a loose defensive perimeter. On Captain Walters' command, Corporal Ross sends a single HESH round into the base, causing Saddam's likeness to collapse face first into the ground. After towering over Basra for decades, the statue is no more. With only the Iraqi dictator's boots now sticking out of the base, Walters and 2nd Troop begin their withdrawal to rejoin the main column. Meanwhile, the shells of the 5 Challenger 2s assaulting the TV antenna can't seem to destroy the thin wire metal structure despite the heavy stream of firepower. Major Brown is frustrated at the delay and considers calling in an airstrike, but worries that the failure in bringing down a simple TV mast would be a propaganda victory for the Iraqis. Instead, he orders his loader to switch from HESH rounds, which are usually used against softer targets, to a thin armour-piercing round. The gunner, Corporal Vince McLeod, aims for the iron corner supports, which measure only 6 inches wide. Despite the din of battle, McLeod coolly hits all 3 supports with precise shots, causing the 300-foot-tall TV tower to list before smashing into the ground. A cheer goes up among the men as Major Brown transmits, "0, this is Hotel 10 Alpha, all targets destroyed, withdrawing in contact." With 2nd Troop having rejoined the rest of A Squadron, all 11 Challengers and the recovery vehicle reverse back through the kill zone. Despite the resumption of heavy enemy fire, every vehicle in the column will return to the line of departure without damage. The mission is a success, and the Fedayeen, as well as Saddam's propaganda machine in Basra, has been severely degraded. Although the 29th of March raid into Basra has been a major public relations victory for the British, Iraqi forces defending the city continued to resist. The suburbs of Hamdan and Al-Jahudi to the southeast of the city centre have proven to be especially difficult to subdue due to their status as Ba'ath Party strongholds. The commander of 3 Commando Royal Marines, Brigadier Jim Dutton, decides that this area, along with the community of Abu al-Kasib, must be cleared out in order to weaken the Iraqi defence of Basra. The solution is Operation James, a risky plan that will require Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Messenger's 40 Commando and C Squadron of the Scots DG to secure these southern suburbs in close quarters fighting. Following a preemptive artillery barrage, the attack will begin on 4 different axes the morning of the 30th of March, supported by US Marine Corps Cobra attack helicopters. 2nd and 3rd Troop of the Scots DG will support the western and easternmost axes of advance respectively. Many of the Challenger 2 crewmen are anxious about the prospect of urban combat, where their tanks will be at their most vulnerable. Operation James begins on the morning of the 30th of March. To the east of Abu al-Kasib, Captain Fraser McClellan's 3rd Troop and Alpha Company of 40 Commando make short work of the opposition, with support from a US Marine Cobra and intense barrages from the British artillery. The Royal Marines secure Iraqi strongpoints and even capture an Iraqi Lieutenant Colonel and a Major who are taken in for questioning. 3rd Troop and Alpha Company capture their objectives hours ahead of schedule, and the British troops are relaxing in Abu al-Kasib's main marketplace by lunchtime. Yet, resistance is tougher to the west, where 40 Commando's Manoeuvre Support Group, along with Captain Richard Lasser's 2nd Troop, are attacking into a hornet's nest. The first assault into Al-Jahudi and Hamdan is launched an hour late due to a friendly fire incident necessitating the evacuation of 4 wounded Royal Marines. When the British finally advance, 2nd Troop and the MSG find themselves outnumbered 5-1 by an enemy that is well prepared for them. The first attack is called off for fear of civilian casualties in the area, and the MSG is forced to abandon a transport vehicle during the retreat. 2nd Troop regroups back at the line of departure, where Sergeant David Baird is informed that his Challenger, callsign 2-1, will lead the next attack. The second attempt goes in at noon, along with reinforcements from L Company of 4-2 Commando Royal Marines. Sergeant Baird leads the 3 Challengers of 2nd Troop past the abandoned transport, leaving it to be recovered by the Royal Marines. This time, the area is completely deserted, which only increases the tension inside 2-1's turret. As the Challenger 2 is manoeuvring only inches away from a deep trench on the right side of the road, 5 RPGs suddenly streak out of a nearby date palm and smash into Baird's tank. A shower of automatic fire follows, and another RPG makes a direct hit on the commander's cupola, shattering 2 of the 4 periscopes. To make matters worse, the frontal coaxial machine gun jams, leaving the tank almost defenceless. Baird calls for help on the radio. "We're getting hit big time here. All my sights are out. I can't see a thing. Where are you?" Captain Lasser immediately responds, "We're right here, and we're not going anywhere without you. We're giving you covering fire." The next 2 tanks in line turn to the left and rake the enemy positions with machine gun fire, while Baird attempts to reverse back towards friendly forces. As the Challenger is gingerly attempting to reverse past the abandoned transport, Baird calls out left stick, while the gunner and loader shout right stick at the same time. The confused driver pulls right stick, and the Challenger 2 tumbles backward into a deep trench to the right. With both tracks thrown and the tank's thinly armoured underbelly exposed to the enemy, Baird's crew is helpless to defend themselves. Fedayeen and Iraqi army regulars stream out of the nearby groves and buildings to fire RPGs at the stricken tank. Seeing that the defenceless Challenger is about to be overrun, Captain Lasser and 2nd Troop's other tank fire HESH rounds and coaxial machine gun fire into the mass of enemy fighters to keep them at bay. Lasser estimates there is a full company of Iraqi dismounts attempting to storm Sergeant Baird's tank and calls for reinforcements and the recovery vehicle. In the meantime, the 2 remaining Challengers must fight off multiple enemy attacks, trying to force the advancing Iraqi forces back to the nearest tree line. Several RPGs and even a Milan anti-tank guided missile strike Baird's tank, but none penetrate. Sergeant Baird fires off the tank's smoke grenades to buy his crew some time, but the Iraqis still keep coming. After 30 minutes of desperate fighting, the commander of C Squadron, Major John Biggett, arrives with his Challenger 2 with the recovery vehicle. Biggett takes position 20 yards behind the disabled tank, while the recovery vehicle moves forward to retrieve it from the ditch. Biggett gives the order to lay down suppressing fire while 3 Remies leap from the vehicle and attach a winch to Baird's Challenger 2. Braving the heavy Iraqi fire, the engineers return to their vehicle and attempt to winch the disabled tank out of the ditch. However, the angle is too shallow and the cable snaps without the Challenger budging an inch. Major Biggett considers evacuating Baird's crew and destroying the tank to keep it out of Iraqi hands, but decides on one last rescue effort. He calls for another Challenger 2 and a 2nd recovery vehicle to move with all haste to his position. The sun is setting by the time the 2 vehicles arrive, and Iraqi fire has picked up again. Determined to save the tank, Major Biggett orders Baird and his crew, as well as the engineers, to meet him behind the stricken Challenger. British artillery fires several smoke rounds to block the enemy's view as Biggett opens his hatch and strolls through a storm of machine gun tracers and RPGs to his waiting men. He makes it clear they are not leaving without Baird's Challenger 2, telling them, come hell or high water, that tank is not falling into enemy hands. Through the hail of fire, Biggett walks back to his tank as casually as before, and calls Lieutenant Colonel Messenger to ask him to push 40 Commandos MSG up to cover the rescue operation. Within 20 minutes, 2 platoons of 60 Royal Marines spread out and form a perimeter around the tank, while the engineers once again get to work. Night falls across the battlefield, as both sides continue to exchange heavy volumes of fire. 40 Commandos mortars fire illumination flares to light up Iraqi positions, along with smoke rounds to shield the engineers who are still toiling away. The Marines do an impressive job covering the operation, expending over 30,000 rounds from their GPMGs to suppress the Iraqis, as well as taking out a sniper with a Milan anti-tank missile. Finally, the recovery vehicle is ready to pull the tank out of the ditch and begins reversing. This time, the Challenger 2 responds, and the recovery vehicle manages to budge the tank a few feet. However, the brittle sod embankment gives way just as the tank is winched back onto the road surface, snapping the cable yet again. The Challenger falls back into the ditch even more deeply wedged this time, causing Major Biggett to slam his fist into the side of his turret in frustration. Galvanized by the failure, the Iraqis once again attempt to storm the tank, but are beaten off by vicious Challenger 2 tank and Royal Marine fire with heavy casualties. The British are using their superior night vision equipment to great effect. The Remies now try to cut the jammed tracks loose to make it easier to recover the tank, but the welding torches are bright and draw too much enemy fire to the position. By this point, the tank has been stuck for 12 hours and Iraqi forces continue to pour into the area. After this latest failed attempt, Major Biggett asks the lead engineer on scene, Corporal James Garrett, "Is there nothing left we can try?" Garrett responds, "Well, there is one very small chance. Do it." 5 minutes later, both recovery vehicles move in again, this time carrying 2 A-frame drawbars and chains. The unorthodox plan is to attach the A-frames to the tank before both vehicles pull the Challenger out of the ditch. Brigate recognises this is their last attempt, otherwise they will have to destroy the tank. The engineers continue their dangerous work under fire for the next 15 minutes. Once both A-frames are attached and chained to the recovery vehicles, every man holds his breath to see if the plan will work. With RPGs and mortars exploding around them, the recovery vehicles hit their accelerators, and the Challenger begins to slowly move. Sergeant Baird can't bear to watch as the tank rises and slowly teeters on the edge of the ditch. A second later, the Challenger 2 slams down on the road in an upright position, and the Marines and tankers cheer. Bigot switches on the radio to report the good news. "This is Zero Alpha. All units prepare to withdraw. Well done, engineers. Now let's get the hell out of here." Moving at no more than 5 miles an hour, the armoured convoy slowly makes its way out of the Iraqi kill zone, while the Marines execute a bounding withdrawal. This continues for over a mile before the Scots DG and 40 Commando are out of range from Iraqi fire. Sergeant David Baird's Challenger 2 has taken 14 direct hits from RPGs, and 1 from a Milan anti-tank missile. The tracks along with the sights have been destroyed. Yet, 72 hours later, the Challenger is back on the front lines in full operational order, a testament to the British Army and Coalition's excellent logistical train. Although this attack fails, Operation James succeeds in further squeezing the Iraqi defenders around Basra. It will not be long until the city falls. The only question is how long this will take, and how much blood will need to be spilled to see it through. Thanks again to our sponsor Conflict of Nations for supporting this video. Don't forget to support the Operations Room by clicking the link in the description below and starting your journey to global victory today. Thanks again to our patrons who make these videos possible. Your support is the reason we can produce series like this. Welcome to all our new patrons this month, and a special thanks to our Patron of the Week, Christopher Cardona. Each week we select our favourite Patreon reactions to shout out. This week, Rob Crocker says, "The bravery of the REMI personnel is on full display here. Nobody can doubt their cool thinking and ingenuity in a variety of situations under fire." And Stunt Cork says, "Excellent work as always. My only question is, was that Fedayeen wearing a Star Wars Imperial Navy prop as a helmet?" If you'd like to join our Patreon and get access to exclusive benefits such as early release to videos ad and sponsor free, we would love to have you as part of our community.